Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope everyone is well. So in the next couple of videos, I'm going to show you how you can solve quadratic inequalities. I'll go through how I approach to solving the quadratic inequality problems, and hopefully that will help you to solve how you can approach to solving these problems. So let's jump straight into with the calculator intro. So if you go to the website Physics and Maths Tutor and scroll down to grade 8 and 9 and look at this problem, quadratic inequalities. If you open it in a new tab, I've already opened that in a new tab. So if you look at the first problem, so first you have to understand what is a quadratic inequality. It's basically the equation of inequality that you have to solve. For example, in the first problem, you have to solve x square plus 4x plus 3 is greater than 0. So you have to solve this inequality. So how can you solve this inequality? So if I go to my notepad, not this one, but this one, okay, and use my pen tool. So x square plus 4x plus 3 is x square plus 4x plus 3 is greater than 0. Is greater than 0. So you have to solve this inequality. So how can you solve this inequality? So let's first do a middle term of this. So if you do a middle term on this, we can write x square plus, you can divide this middle term into 3x and x because there is 3 here. So we can do x square plus thrice x plus x plus 3 greater than 0. Or this can also be simplified as
x multiplied by x plus 3 plus 1 multiplied by x plus 3 is greater than 0.
Or this can also be simplified as
x plus 3 and x plus 1 is greater than 0.
Now, as you can see, we have this form of inequality where there are two terms multiplication, x plus 3 and x plus 1. So first we have to find the critical points of this inequality. So if you look at this term, if we use the value of x as minus 3, then x plus 3 is what? X plus 3 is 0. And if we look at this term, if we use the value of x as minus 1, then x plus 1 is 0. So basically, if we take the term, this term as 0 and this term as 0, we find the critical points of x. X is minus 3 and minus 1. So minus 3 and minus 1 are the two critical points of x in the equation, in the inequality equation. So these two critical points creates three intervals. So what is an interval? An interval is a range. So as you can see, one interval can be from minus infinity. Interval is from minus infinity to minus 3. This is the first interval. Then there is another interval that is from minus 3 to minus 1. That is a second interval. And there is another interval from minus 1 to infinity, positive infinity. That is a third interval. So as you can see, there are three intervals here. So let's use some values. Let's say one value from each interval. So let's take the first interval. What is a number between minus infinity and minus 3? Let's say minus 5. That is between minus infinity and minus 3. So let's use this value minus 5 into the equation x plus 3. This equation x plus 3 x plus 1 is greater than 0. Then this equation would be what? Minus 5 plus 3, or rather the left part of the term 2 multiplication of the multiplication of two terms. So let's say minus 5 plus 3 and minus 5 plus 1. Now let's look at this term, minus 5 plus 1. So what is this value? Minus 5 plus 3 is minus 2, and multiplied by minus 5 plus 1 is minus 4. So what is the multiplication of minus 2 multiplied by minus 4? This is minus 8. So for the first interval, if you take any value, this is plus 8. So the plus 8 is greater than 0. So this whole inequality solves for the value x is minus 5, x having minus 5 value. So for the first interval, if you take any value, it will solve the equation. Let's take one value from the second. Let's say what is between minus 3 and minus 1? Let's say minus 2. So if we take the value of minus 2 and use the value of minus 2 in this equation, this whole equation, so what will be the result?
Minus 2 plus 3 and multiplied by minus 2 plus 1. Minus 2 plus 1.
So what is the result of this? This results in minus 2 plus 3 is 1, and minus 2 plus 1 is minus 1. So this results in minus 1, which is less than 0. So for the second interval, it doesn't solve the equation because the equation demands is greater than 0, but we get the value less than 0. So the second interval is false. For the first interval it was true. For the second interval it was false if we used a value from the second interval. Now let's take a value from the third interval. Let's take a value from the third interval. Let's say what is in between minus 1 and infinity. Let's say 2. So if we use the value of 2 in this equation, what will be the value? Minus
2 plus 3 multiplied by 2 plus 1. 2 plus 1. So what is the value? What is the result? 2 plus 3 is 5 and 2 plus 1 is 3. So 5 multiplied by 3 is 15.
So 15 is greater than 0. So this interval, for any value of this interval, this is true. The equation is inequality is solved because it's greater than 0. So as we can see, only for the second interval we get a false condition, but for the first and third condition we get true intervals. So the solution of this inequality, quadratic inequality, is the solution of this quadratic inequality is x belongs to what? The first interval, minus infinity to minus 3. So minus infinity to minus 3. If you take any value from this interval, this will solve. So x belongs to this interval. Union means and if we omit the second interval and take the third interval, which is true but the second interval is false, so the third interval is minus 1 to infinity. minus 1 to infinity. So this is the solution of the quadratic inequality. If you look at the problem number 2, 3 and 4, all of them are of the same type as number 1. You have to do the middle term first, then find two factor terms and find the critical points and the intervals, and then test out each one value from each interval to check which condition fills up. So 2, 3 and 4 are of the same type. So number 5, we will do number 5, which is a slightly different type, which has an greater than or equal to 0 or equal 0. So you have to solve this equation, which is x square minus 7x plus 12 less than or equal 0. So if I go to my notepad and use my pen tool, it says x square minus 7x plus 12 is less than or equal 0. So if we middle term this,
we can do something like 7. 7 can be divided by, because 12 we can use 4 and 3. So x square minus 4x minus 3x plus 12 is less than or equal 0. So we can simplify this and write it directly, which is x square minus 4x is x into x minus 4. So one term would be x minus 4 and another term would be x into x minus 4 minus 3 into x minus 4. So another term would be x minus 3. So this is less than or equal 0.
so what are the critical points if you use these two factors? If you use the value of x 4, then this is 0, and if you use the value of x as 3, this is 0. So the critical points are 4 and 3, or we can also write it as 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 are the critical points. So if you find out intervals, so the first interval would be what? Minus infinity to 3, and the second interval would be 3 to 4, and the third interval would be 4 to positive infinity. So this is the first interval, minus infinity to 3. This is the second interval, and this is the third interval. So let's test out one value from each interval. So let's take one value from this interval. So what is between minus infinity and 3? Let's say minus 2. Okay, so let's use the value of minus 2 in the inequality, this inequality. So what is the result? Minus 2 minus 4 multiplied by minus 2 minus 3 minus 2 minus 3. So what is the result? Minus 2 minus 4 is minus 6, and minus 2 minus 3 is what? Minus 6 multiplied by minus 2 minus 3 is minus 5. So this is what? Minus 6 multiplied by minus 5 is 30. So this is greater than 0, right? Minus 6 minus 2 minus 4 into minus 2 minus 3. So minus 6 minus 2 minus 4 is minus 6, minus 2 minus 3 is minus 5. So minus 6 multiplied by minus 5, 30, which is greater than 0. But this equation is less than or equal 0. So the first interval is false. So let's take a value from the second interval. So what is between 3 and 4? Let's say 3.5. So if you use the value of 3.5 in the equation or the inequality, sorry, so what is the result?
3.5 minus 4 multiplied by 3.5 minus 3. So what is this result? 3.5 minus 4 is minus 3.5 minus 3 is what? 3.5 minus 3 is 0.5. So what is the multiplication of 0.5 multiplied by 0.5? This is 5 5 is 25. So I think it's minus, because there is only one minus and it's plus, so it's going to be minus 0.25, I think.
So this is less than 0. So does it suffice the condition less than or equal to 0? Because it's less than 0, it suffices the condition less than or equal to 0. So this is true. So if you use the value from the third one, the third interval, let's say from the third interval, let's take a value. What is between 4 and infinity? Let's say 5. Let's use the value of 5 in the equation or the inequality, this inequality. So 5 minus 4 into 5 minus 3. So what is the result of
5 minus 4 multiplied by 5 minus 3? This is what? This is 1 multiplied by minus 2, which is minus 2. Now this is less than 0. 5 minus 3 is 2 and 5 minus 4 is 1, sorry, it's plus 2. So this is greater than 0.
So this condition is false. So only this condition suffices, which is 3 and 4. So the solution to this inequality is x belongs to open interval 3 and 4. Now what does this mean? So this interval means that 3 and 4, x belongs to 3 and 4, including 3 and 4, including the end points. But if it was like this, 3 and 4, that means excluding 3 and 4 endpoints. This range, but not 3 and 4. But in this case, it is including 3 and 4. That's why this bracket is used. So this is the solution. So I hope you get an idea of how you can solve quadratic inequality problems with these two problem demonstrations. In the next video, I'll be going through some more quadratic inequality problems and dive deeper into these concepts. So stay tuned for that.